Good afternoon and welcome. We are very happily joined here today by Professor Jeremy Myerson from the Worktech Academy, event organizer, academic, critic, expert on the workplace. Dr. Myerson's been organizing events around the world with Worktech, which everyone knows as a brand, and has continued to do so under the auspices of the lockdown. So he joins us today so we can talk not only about any future return to work, but also those regional nuances about how we're seeing differing approaches, forward thinking about the future of the office and how it may manifest itself. So not much to fit into 15 minutes, but we're going to give it a try. Good morning. Sorry, Jeremy, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, and good to be here.
Excellent. So first off, I mean, you guys have been doing events all the way through. Do you feel that we're kind of moving through this pandemic and lockdown process together, or do you feel there's a step change in the different regions and how they're viewing the office and the workplace?
I think there's a global response to changes in workplace across regions. When I say we're doing events, Worktech is pivoting from live events, obviously, which we can't do, to a series of virtual events, webinars, online meetups and workshops and so on. And the tools to do that are really quite sophisticated now. But what we're seeing in terms of our network around the world, and Worktech is present, in most regions of the world, from North and South America, Europe, APAC, and so on. We're seeing that different countries and different world cities are coming in and out of lockdown as the pandemic spikes in different places, different times. But we're seeing some very, very core global trends: the acceleration of remote working, the pivot towards new technology, automation, AI, and a questioning of the corporate real estate portfolio and what the office means in the future. I think this is a global debate. It's not really down to regions. And the central question is, what will a space portfolio look like in the future for companies? And that's as true whether you're in Seoul or Singapore, or whether you're in San Francisco or London.
Jeremy, sorry, John. On that note, I read an article on your website this morning that was kind of talking about a futuristic kind of way of working in 2040. And it kind of set the scene of two individuals that were working in a community environment, which was an old shopping centre and been completely remodeled. I mean, you talk about kind of moving towards some change. Do you see that extreme, happening, where our worlds are blended into one tightly knit community, as it were, which is focused around both work and living?
Well, I think we're seeing a major breakdown in the old binary divisions between life and work, and between office space and domestic space. We used to take work home with us in the evening. Now we have got work with us all the time in the home. And if you look at the surveys, people want to go back to the office, and they see a purpose in face-to-face communication and in social interaction and innovation activities that you don't get when you're just talking to people over Zoom or Microsoft Teams. But they don't want to go 5 days a week from morning till night on crowded commuter trains, making long journeys. So we're going to see a new pattern of work emerging. And the scenario that we published on our digital platform, Worktech Academy, was explaining that actually a lot of big box retail is probably going to be converted into homes, into third spaces for work, co-working spaces, and so on. And there will be communities in which work and life are integrated, and that's what we were kind of describing in that 2040 scenario. So yes, I think it's already beginning to happen, and we're going to see less focus on traveling long distances to central business districts, to the corporate HQ where it all happens, and more new models like hub and spoke, more distribution of work, and we're going to use technology to bring people together to the right places at the right time to get business done and to make innovation happen.
So I mean, it's a question I have to ask. So the office is far from dead. This is actually more likely a bright new beginning for the office, right?
Yes. Well, there was a report very recently from EY and the Urban Land Institute, which was exploring the future of city centre offices. There's been a lot of panic and scare stories. And actually, people are going to hang on to their city centre offices. We're just not going to travel there every day. And what we're going to have is less a quantity of space, but more a quality of space. These offices are going to go up in spec. They're going to be forums for social interaction. You will go there for events. You will go there for training and mentoring, town hall meetings, big project kickoffs. So they're going to look more like hotel lobbies. And it's already, we can see it beginning to happen with, the active lobby movement in office towers. We're going to see offices moving away from the, max pack, cram them in. People are not going to sit at a desk at a bench answering emails all day in a city centre office. It's too expensive and it's the wrong use of people's time and company space. What we're going to see is offices become quite hospitality driven, and in a sense the co-working space and the kind of things that Instant have been talking about with the rise of flexible space, it's these type of service led operators who have really blazed the trail of what the mainstream office is going to become in the post-pandemic era.
You just going back a minute or two, you mentioned technology is kind of a key element of this, and obviously Worktech, focusing on technology quite a lot across your platform. We've heard a lot about kind of the need for more technology to help us working remotely or working this in the new way of work. Most of us spend a third to two-thirds of our day on these kind of Zoom calls. Have you seen any sort of new technology that's already starting to emerge in sort of reaction to what or how we're working right now?
Well, the technology is already being developed, but what's happened, COVID-19 has, accelerated the trend. So we are pivoting very quickly. If we're using tablets and our smartphones and our laptops to speak to each other on Zoom, it doesn't take much to go a stage further to connect it together. And we're going to see what is being called an app-centric workplace, where we're going to access things through an app. And we're going to not have free address to office buildings in the way we had in the past. We will have to book our slot in the building. There's going to be lower levels of density and higher levels of curation. And so we're going to have services and networks, and you will plan your day through a workplace app, so that when you arrive, the security systems know that it's you. Your coffee will be there just how you like it. Meeting rooms will be booked, and importantly, you will be with those people on that day in the office that you need to be interacting with, and that will happen through digital technology.
It's so interesting though, because I've been on a lot of these calls and spoken to a lot of people within the workspace and CRE community. It's funny how so many of these discussions, the natural reaction is to default to discussing workplace densities. And that was one of the first responses that came out during the initial lockdown. I forget from who it was, about the 6-foot office. There have been subsequent discussions, but in a very tactical, literal way about, how will we be changing the proportion of desk occupancy? I suppose that shows in one way why the sector hasn't really moved on, and why we're still wedded to this idea of the desk and the space. It's still that very literal interpretation of the future, isn't it?
We are I suppose we're steeped in a culture that goes right back to the Taylorist office at the beginning of the 20th century, where you had very expensive city centre real estate and you tried to cram as many people in as possible. What we've now got to think about is the office not as a container for work, but as a platform for work. and it has digital aspects and it has physical aspects, and you bring people together physically for a purpose. And therefore, we're going to see a lot of changes in the office environment. We're going to get really serious about culture, about ambience. Already, through our Worktech Academy, where we try to bring the best kind of academic thinking together with industry practice, we've had a lot of inquiries about theatre lighting and theatre lighting designers. And there's a lot of interest in soundscaping. There was a very interesting survey done by Gensler over the summer, where they interviewed several thousand office workers about the return to work. And the younger the worker, the more they wanted to go back to work. But they didn't want to go back to the old Max Pack office with high densities because it was already detrimental to productivity. They said, we want to go back to the workplace, but we only want to go back with critical changes. And number one was getting rid of noise distraction and reducing density, which also serves the purpose of making people feel safer. But actually, in a few short months, through our networks, we're hearing a new conversation. It's not just about socially distancing people, because we can think beyond the pandemic now, a vaccine's on its way and so on. We want to not just socially distance people, we want to socially engage people, but in a way which is much more conducive to the way that a hotel does it. The high-end hospitality service providers, the way you would when you're traveling business class on an airline. It's very, very interesting what people are thinking about now, because it doesn't mean the office is dead. It doesn't mean that they're going to be spending less on offices. They may have less office space, but they will want better office space with more natural daylighting, with better air filtration systems. The game has got to be upped. You can't just put people into, a bog standard office. If people want to attract the best talent, they're going to have to really upgrade the office space, which is actually quite good news for the supply chain around the workplace industry. Because people are not going to be in the office the whole time. When they go into the office, they want a heightened experience. They're going to work partially from home, and there's a lot of innovation happening around design for the home now, making appliances quieter, improving airflow in the home, and all of these kinds of things. And then there's the third space issue, which you guys are expert in, the rise of flex space at the expense of corporate space. People won't be leasing lots of buildings on long, inflexible leases and then have the headache of what do they do with the fit out. They will be moving into flexible solutions. And I think for the flexible space industry and Worktech Academy, we've just been doing our own kind of study of what's been going on. What we believe is that once the operators in this field globally get over the short-term hit of the economic downturn that follows the pandemic, once they get over that short-term hit, the future for the industry is actually very, very bright, because it's going to be part of a hybrid portfolio.
Absolutely. I mean, look, from our perspective, that's fantastic insight into what we're seeing, and chimes admittedly with a lot of the issues and the opportunities we're seeing from the flex space sector, and it's being replayed to us by the corporate occupiers. So, Jeremy, I'd just say thank you very much for your time today. We really do appreciate it, as I know you have a lot of events, and thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Jeremy.